We're awaiting a verdict in New York versus Trump that could find the presumptive GOP presidential nominee guilty. Trump will likely appeal any conviction, and that could be a lengthy process. Co-host of The Five, Judge Jeanine Pirro, joins us live outside the courthouse on this historic trial. Judge, good morning. Tell us, if the former president is found guilty, there will be an inevitable appeals process. What would that look like, and on what grounds do you see the former president appealing?
You know, Emily, there are so many grounds that the president can appeal this on in the event he were to be convicted. I mean, not the least of which is a violation of the Fifth Amendment. The defendant was not given adequate notice of what the charges are, either in the indictment, the bill of particulars, the opening statement, or in terms of the evidence. Number two is the fact that this case is, you know, people call it a case of first impression. I call it a magic show. This is a case where the prosecutors, they apparently met for a weekend or something and tried to figure out a way that they could indict Donald Trump on 2 expired misdemeanors with a felony, unbeknownst to any of us, until pretty much the just summation and the charge to the jury of a column A, B, or C crime over which the state prosecutor, like myself, has no jurisdiction. So you can include that felony that's going to raise those dead misdemeanors and resurrect them if they are a violation of the Federal Election Commission Act, the Federal Election Crime Act, or if they're a violation of federal tax law, neither of which a local DA has any jurisdiction. And the fact that you've got to have a unanimous verdict, a unanimous jury on any of the counts. That's a violation of the Sixth Amendment and the Seventh Amendment. And the fact that in this particular case, the judge has allowed both Michael Cohen and David Pecker to be able to talk about the fact that they have been implicated, Cohen specifically pleading guilty to a campaign violation, and Pecker working out a deal with the prosecutors, and then magic in the judge's charge to the jury. You know what? Michael Cohen was aiding and abetting Donald Trump. Now we know what it was for. Federal Election Commission, violations. And the adverse missing witness charge should have been granted against Alan Weisselberg, who was in the control of the prosecution, who had relevant material evidence. And lastly, there is no proof of guilt here. No one has testified that Donald Trump had anything to do with the invoice, the vouchers, or the checks. All we know is that he signed checks when he was talking on the phone, and all of this happened after the election. And we just heard a readback where Donald Trump says, I don't pay money for stories, I don't pay money for stories, I don't pay money for stories. So what we're doing here is they are trying to crucify a candidate for president based upon make-believe crimes over which they have no jurisdiction. Other than that, it's a good case.
So, Judge, in the off chance that the president indeed is convicted and they do go through this lengthy appeals process, during that phase, would a sentence be stayed so the former president can continue campaigning? Would he be allowed to pursue his candidacy, or would he be hamstrung during this appeal process?
Well, you know, it's interesting. In a case like this, assuming there were to be a conviction, it's a Class C felony. The max you face is 4 years, 1/3 to 4. The truth is, without a prior record, there should be incarceration shouldn't be considered. However, you can get bail pending appeal from the trial judge. If the trial judge denies it, you can request appellate bail. I assume there's going to be some post-conviction motions here if there is a conviction, and they go to the appellate division in New York, and that can take months and months before it's actually perfected and before there is a decision that's brought down. There are other sanctions, of course, Emily, as you well know. We've got probation, we've got conditional discharges, we've got a complete release based upon what has happened so far, saying, you're free to go. But there are so many options here. I'm concerned about the judge. He hasn't been fair in this case, and this isn't a political statement. It is a legal one. This judge is not fair to this defendant, and it is a constitutional issue right now that I think that these lawyers can certainly take up.
Judge Jeanine Pirro, thank you So much. All right, we're going to bring it back to the couch. Paul Mauro, what say you on the plethora of appealable options here and what that might look like?
Well, first thing I would say is just play Judge Jeanine's comments right there to the appellate division, all right, because you're halfway home. She really summed it up. I'd say a couple things real quick. First of all, the Molyneux issue, which is letting in extraneous stuff to dirty up the defendant. All right, that's sort of a dumbed-down version of what that is. But why does that matter? In New York State Court, we recently had a reversal on that in the Weinstein case. All right, so that's right. Number two, in terms of conditions, you can put them under probation and proscribe travel. So, you know, that is something that could be on the table. Every time we say, oh, they'll never do such a thing, they do such a thing, all right? Why do I get the feeling that this judge might proscribe Donald Trump's travel to the South Bronx, all right? And then lastly, there's a bigger problem here, which eventually, if they get to it, it'll be 10 years from now. But the statute itself is unconstitutional. At some point, the statute they use, that intent to commit a second crime and so it bumps to a felony, that whole thing is going to go. And this case is going to highlight why.
Kaylee, to the Weinstein analogy here, that took a couple years. Yeah. Everything takes forever here. And at the end of the day, we keep talking about reversible error. We also talk about the prejudice, the fact that this is irreparable prejudice. And I argue that it would be irreparable prejudice and injury to this candidate for president.
Bingo. Because an appeal would take place after the election, just on the timing of the appeals process. But the Biden campaign would have the benefit of saying convicted felon. How fair is that? Not only that, keep the guy off the campaign trail, potentially, incongruous to how we think a presidential election should be run. And I just have to put an exclamation mark on what you said, the judge prescribing him from travel to the South Bronx. This candidate has a lot of energy behind him. He's gaining with Black voters, Latino voters. Prescribing travel from the South Bronx, very clever.
What do you see?
It's interesting that the judge has so much leeway in this case, a judge that Donald Trump has repeatedly attacked online as biased. You know,
well, he has a gag order.
Donald Trump has repeatedly gone after this judge, and he has a lot of power, particularly in sentencing here. And that's the way the system works. If it goes after the election, that's when it goes.
You know, I know that some of the focus for this segment has been on, or most of it has been on, what happens if he's convicted and all the different choices. What happens if he's not? Mm-hmm. Politically speaking, that makes him Teflon.
Absolutely.
Because he's going to have new reasons to say that the justice system is two-tiered and it's stacked against some in this country, and he can lay out as examples what he's been through with, you know, a critically looked upon biased judge. You heard Judge Jeanine saying that too. So it is interesting. If he, I don't want to call it a win, because this has been captive for him, but he's fighting a case against him, and victory for him might look like, well, I'm innocent and I need to get out on the campaign trail like never before.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.